I'm just in the van, and we're just getting to where we are, so there might be a little things going around me, but I'm paying attention, and I'm listening. So just so you know.
It's okay. It's okay. I know you guys are on tour, so maybe we could start with that. So tell me, how's it coming along? Have you played some songs from the new album yet? How's everything going?
Yeah, tour's going great. We are playing 4 songs off of the new album. The 2 singles that are out already, and a couple more singles that we're going to be releasing the day of the release and then after the release. So
yeah, great. So moving along from that, what's it like a day in the creative process of Bentney? How do 6 people stand each other and agree with each other when making an album? Do you have any rules when composing or recording, perhaps?
yeah, I think the 2 really important aspects are trying to make sure that we try out all of everybody's ideas. You know, because a lot of things it's really hard to the reason we make music is because there's stuff that's hard to communicate, by words. So sometimes trying an idea is way cooler than discussing an idea. So we try to actually play things and like try out the ideas instead of just talking about them. And I think the other thing is, I think we've all gotten really great about sort of like big picture stuff and sort of deciding, like which points are really important. What is something that I really want this way versus, something that's like, oh, I could go either way. And so the discussions I think are better balanced because, we can, if it's like something that someone's really passionate about, we'll be like, okay, let's do that, things like that.
Yeah, that's great. So going back to frosting, is there any form of message you're trying to deliver with the album? Like it could be a concept or rather a statement as a band?
I don't think so. It's really a collection of songs that came out from like when we were writing. We wrote all of the songs in June of last year, so June 2020.
Yeah.
And none of our albums are concept albums, but I think they end up having a theme because they're written, during a certain chunk of time. Yeah. So I think that there's parts of the album that reflect sort of what kind of state we were in last June 2020. But yeah, there's not necessarily a message. A lot of our music, I really like hearing what our listeners and fans like interpret from our music. Yeah. And I think in general, we've never been like, this is the message that we want you to get from our music. So I think that's, still true with this album.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite song on the album? It could be for any reason, like for example, the one you love to play live the most.
Not in particular. I really like all the songs. It's kind of like, having to choose between your family members, who's your favorite family member or something like that. So I don't necessarily have a favorite song out of all of them. I think depending on the day, they're all different. I so far we're playing Queer Gods, Set It Off, and Not This Time, and Invest in Breakfast live. Yeah. And I honestly love them all. They're all so much fun to play. Yeah.
Not This Time is a perfect closer, by the way. I love it.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah.
It's a great song.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really proud of my vocal performance on that song. Yeah.
So I must admit that no album of yours is an easy listen, and Frosting is not the exception by all means. In fact, my first listen to it was rather disconcerting. There are some chunks I'd like to ask specifically about, like we mentioned that before, the heavily auto-tuned Invest in Breakfast or the vicious The Upward Spiral. How did those songs come along? I assume that the latter is a nod to Nine Inch Nails. Am I right?
Oh yes, it is. Yeah, it's not so subtle of a nod, but yeah, I think that came out from just I think Gavin had created like a little guitar loop or something, and then Vince had gone and created like a really wild distorted sound, and that just kind of got folded into this one thing. And yeah, and I think again it was sort of reflecting what kind of situation we were all going through last year, and like the angst and the anger and the like the rage and the frustration, which came out that way, very aggressive. With Invest in Breakfast, that's a really special song. It's it starts the record off with a real bang, and it's also extra special because our bass player Jessica is singing lead vocals along with our violin player Chris Baum, which is very cool. And yeah, I feel like we get asked a lot about the auto-tune stuff, and I don't necessarily think that there's like a big philosophical answer to it. It's just, I think we're just looking for different kinds of textures. And I think there's a significant hyperpop influence on this album in terms of what we were listening to and the sounds we were interested in. And what you can create with auto-tune in terms of vocal textures are very different from traditional vocal in the sense. And recently a friend was talking to me and we were having this conversation, and she just said, why not use all the tools at your disposal? And I'd heard that phrase before, but I just it just really struck me where I was like, yeah, why not use all the tools in our disposal? And that wasn't necessarily the reason that we used Autotune. This is a very recent conversation. We finished the album a while back. But yeah, I think we're just kind of looking at everything that we have and trying to create the best and most interesting and compelling and sort of like things that draw us in, because we're creating music that we're most excited and most interested in.
So very small question, is that you screaming in The Upward Spiral?
Yeah. That's me. I think that's me, and I think there's maybe like a crowd vocal of everybody else screaming as well. There's a bunch of textures riding in that section.
Frosting is all about the textures.
Very much so. Yeah, it's about textures and it's about contrast.
So you always do these sort of live in studio things, and I particularly love them, perhaps even more than the proper studio output, because I found it so fascinating to see the raw energy and the fun you guys have when performing. Are there plans for something similar with Frosting?
Yeah, we haven't discussed anything specifically, partially because this is the first album that we've finished without ever playing all of the songs live. So we didn't attempt to play any of these songs until the album was mixed and mastered and done. And all the other albums we've done, we've played the music out live, and we've sort of used that as an experiment, a process to sort of figure out how the songs are working. So right now we only can play 4 songs because those are the only songs that we've learned. So there's going to be a process of figuring out how to play the other songs and stuff. But we really like doing the live in studio stuff, and so I'm sure we'll sort of end up doing that at some point, and I think that'll be really exciting.
I'm hoping for it to come out soon.
Cool.
So what drives you to be radically different with each release? With this, I mean, your essence is still there, but in practice, there's a unique approach to every album, as if you're reimagining your sound over and over again.
I got your question. Let me just I just have to say something to the band here in a sec. So let me just. Okay, sorry about that. So your question was, how are we continuing to change and evolve our sound as we move from album to album, and you know, where does that sort of come from? Yeah. So for this album, well, every album that we've done, the last 3-4 albums, we've really wanted to shift our sound, and I make this reference a lot whenever we put out a new album. But a lot of us really like Radiohead in the band, and you know, we always sort of look to the moment that they went from the Bends to OK Computer and Kid A, and how much their sound shifted. And I think we really lust for that kind of, you know, extreme change, because that was cool that they just evolved so much just out of nowhere. And so I think we've sort of been, you know, each album that we've done, we've sort of been trying to change the process or do something different. And yeah, I think, you know, every time we've done an album, from Shiny Eyed Babies to Say So to Land Animal to You Know What They Mean, we've shifted more, and the shift has been gradually bigger. But I think from You Know What They Mean to Frosting has been the biggest shift. And indeed, the cause for that is just, you know, I think what we're finding out is that the biggest impact of our sound changing is changing the process. So going from Land Animal to You Know What They Mean was very different, because we used to bring in demos and then sort of compact the demos and put them back together. And then in You Know What They Mean, we started writing together in the studio, which changed the sound a lot. And for Frosting, since we couldn't get together, you know, we were all writing at our homes and sort of pitching demos, not demos, but sort of, you know, fractions of songs, you know. The first couple of days we were just like, okay, let's just go make things that we're excited about. And we would put everything into a Dropbox, and then we would listen to each other's things. So there would be these small sections, you know, like little loops or little sounds or little riffs or little hooks. And we would just kind of go in the direction of what excited us. So, you know, I might be like, oh, you know, I really love this like little part that Jessica made, so I want to work on that tomorrow, you know, things like that. But long story short, yeah, there's a really big shift in how we were writing the songs and recording the songs for this album, which I think really contributed to a really big shift in the aesthetic and the sound.
Yeah, it was sort of a cut and paste sort of process.
Yeah, there was a lot of that, and I think a big part of the production, you know, our producer and synth person, Vince, I think a big part of his work was trying to bring like to smooth some of those edges of like the cut and pasteness in the songs themselves, and also sort of coming up with a large scale structure for all of the songs, which sounded so different. Because for a while we thought maybe this was going to have to be, you know, multiple different releases or, you know, small EPs separated. But we decided to lean into sort of like these big shifts in between songs. And we've been sort of trying to do that with the singles as well, because our first single was Queer Gods, which was very different. And then we put out Set It Off, which was also very different. So we were trying to sort of like set this tone of, you know, this is an album that really goes everywhere.
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. So in this matter, talking about being radically different with each release, are there some bands or artists that inspire you in this particular point?
I think it's really all over the place. I hesitate to speak, you know, to say any one or several groups, because we were all listening to a lot of different things, you know, and since this is Frosting is very much a culmination of all of our musical influences, I'm not going to cover, you know, everything that we were all listening to, but I can speak on a personal level. I can give a couple of examples of some sections, but at the end of The Floor is Lava, that I wrote that sort of choral section that happens, and that kind of vocal texture I've been really inspired by Moses Sumney, who's one of my favorite artists. And I really love the kind of vocal stacks that he creates in his works. So that was something that I was inspired by him. In another section, maybe at the end of Not This Time, I was really inspired by Kesha, American pop artist Kesha. And she has this song called Praying that she put out after, she wasn't able to make music for a long time. And there's some of these like really insane high notes that she hits, and it's so emotional. And so at the end of Not This Time, I was, I really wanted to make something dramatic. I was also listening to a podcast or a news clip with Mariah Carey, and just hearing so much about her life and her career, and, how a lot of people don't know that she wrote her own songs, and, she's an incredible musician, and they just think she's like this figurehead. And, I was just thinking about how she sings. And also, I also am a very big fan of St. Vincent, and there's some really incredible notes that she sings in Mass Seduction. I think it's Young Lover, the song where she has these like really crazy high notes. So I was trying to channel that kind of like, really amazing, incredible, like diva energy. I was sort of straying away from the high side of my like the very high notes in my voice, because I didn't think they were that interesting, and I also hurt my voice a couple times because of bad technique. And I've worked through the pandemic to really like fix that stuff and correct my technique. And so it was just really incredible and liberating to be able to sing so big and intense at the end of those songs. So I don't know if that helps, but those are a couple examples of some things that were inspired in specific moments. And that's just me. So, there's everyone else in the band. There's 6 of us have, very different, little inspirations like that created like little nuggets of stuff. But yeah.
Well, thank you. So moving on to another subject, what do you think of bands being labeled as progressive? Have you ever felt comfortable with that sort of tag?
No, I've never been super stoked about the prog label that gets placed on Bentley. And it's not because I don't like prog music, or like I don't appreciate like people who listen to prog. In fact, all the prog fans and everyone who's listened to prog that likes Bentley have been incredibly good to us. I think the thing that I don't like about it is that, we'll play at like a prog festival, or, we'll be on a prog playlist. And it's just the other artists and the people in that sort of genre in the world are just not ones that I don't listen to, I think it is reasonable to be, for example, like my, as I was just saying, my big influences are people like Moses Sumney, St. Vincent, Fiona Apple, all of these artists. And I've always wanted Bentley to be listed, in cohorts with bands like that, Radiohead, know. So I think that is sort of the conflict that arises with Bentley being labeled prog, is because there's not a lot of people in the band who are actually listening and keeping up with prog. Our drummer Gavin is a big prog, or not, I don't know if I should, can I say you're vintage prog fan? Gavin's in front of me, so I just lost. He said he's a vintage prog fan, so but I think that's like the conflict where I love and appreciate a lot of the people who in prog who've done articles for us, or come to our shows and invited us to festivals and all that stuff. I'm just personally not super into like prog as a listener, so yeah, I think it's a little tricky.
So where do you see your music in the coming years? Do you think it is possible for it to break into the mainstream and be accepted by a wider audience?
I think that would be cool. I guess I feel like your question is akin to the question of, what does success mean to you, right? And I've had conversations with some of my bandmates about how our idea of being a successful band is in some ways outdated. It's like what we wanted to do when we were in high school or something, where we wanted to like play in these giant stadiums and have like action figures made out of us, which would still be cool. But but we're sort of thinking about like, is that what we really want, right? And we're just sort of trying to figure that out. I think for me, in the long run of the band, like I've been trying to shift my life around and like prioritize taking care of myself and having more fun and just trying to be more present for my friends. And so for me, like for the future of the band, what I really want is just for us to, continue making music and to continue to be in each other's lives. And I think that's success, to able to make music that we like and to do it with people that we love. And if that comes with like a ton of financial incentive or, epic, stadium shows, that's great. But I think it has to be built on the foundation of, enjoying what we do and loving what we do. So that's what I sort of envision for the band in the future, I guess.
Yeah. So a few questions about you personally. How did you get into singing? And in that matter, what singers were important to you as you were developing your style?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So I grew up in Japan, and I think we all growing up as a teenagers have like pretty major identity crises, but I didn't really have a frame of reference for my experience because I look more Caucasian than I do Japanese. I'm half Japanese, and so when I was growing up, I was always trying to fit in and to try to assimilate and to like be a part of something. And I started going to like when you're in Japan, when you start going to middle school and high school, a big pastime is just going to karaoke and going to bowling. And so I started to go into a lot of karaoke, and I just found that I was getting a lot of positive feedback from people about my singing. So I just started going into it. I just was really excited because I was like, oh, here's something that I think I'm, decent at, and people accept me. This is a role that people like seeing me in, someone who sings. But some artists who were really important to me growing up were Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, Fiona Apple, and I also, there are a couple of Japanese artists. One is Hikaru Utada, who is, they're now based in the UK, but they're like a mega pop star. And also Shina Ringo, who's another Japanese singer that I was really interested in. And it's kind of cool. There's a new generation of musicians, my age, who grew up listening to Shina Ringo and Utada Hikaru. So, for example, Rina Sawayama, who's a really cool, pop artist, her. She's a big Utada fan. And so, as people who didn't listen to Japanese music growing up, Utada might not seem relative, but her influence carries through, and people like Rina Sawayama. And I don't know if you like Toriko, which is a Japanese like math rock group, and their singer was really heavily influenced by Shina Ringo. So it's really interesting now to be in a generation where I didn't even try mentioning these people when I used to do interviews, because for a long time there was no way to listen to their music. And there was no relevance to what everyone else was listening to. But now you can actually listen to these artists on Spotify and streaming and on YouTube and stuff. And there are more contemporary artists that people are actually excited about all over the world. Not to say that people all over the world aren't excited about Utada Hikaru and Shina Ringo, but there's people who are interested in some of these, like the people who were influenced, by these artists. So, yeah.
I'll be sure to check all of them out.
Yeah. 1 second. I'm just going to say. Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay. So I have a few more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if...
totally.
Okay.
No.
So,
it's totally fine.
do you see your solo career merging with a Bentley sound in the future, or will it always stay as a separate endeavor?
I don't know. That's a good question. They've always been two separate things, but not really. You know, like Bentley has. I feel like there's some groups where when people try to want to do a solo project or something, there's reasonably anxiety from band members. As like, oh, like how much time are you going to spend on your solo project versus band? But in Bentley, we've always had this mentality where it's all like everyone should do all of their things, because Bentley is sort of more than the sum of the parts. It's not just six of us, it's like it's six plus, because we bring all of our instruments. Yeah. So in that sense, I don't think it will ever merge with Bentley, because Bentley is not my writing. Like sometimes people misattribute the lyrics to me. There are other lyric writers in the group, and especially this album, there are other singers in the group. So it's not my project. It's all of our collective project that we can't really achieve without everyone. But yeah, I am interested. I did spend a lot of time during the pandemic working on solo stuff, and I want to try to do more with that in terms of just trying to get it to more people, because for a long time it's just been a project that's personal to me. So I've just released it to people who are already listening to me, or are interested in my work through Bentley. Yeah. But I want to start trying to do more. But yeah, TBD.
Yeah. So do you think it's a possibility to have you visiting Latin America in the not so distant future?
Yeah, I would love to. It's just one of the areas that we haven't been able to go to thus far. And our violin player, Chris, plays in a group called the Video Game Orchestra. So he's done some touring in South America, and he's had nothing but the great things to say about touring in Latin America. And I would just love to just visit and to, just absorb like the energy and the culture, and like all the people, and it's just yeah, I think it's sometimes we get this false sense of well-traveledness because we have gone to a lot of places in America and in the world, but a lot of times we only see like a corner of the city, and it's not like a true reflection of all the places that we've been in. And also, we haven't been to we've been to less places in the world than we have. And so, yeah, I would just love to go to Latin America on a personal level. Thank you. Okay, cool. Yeah, I would just love to have that opportunity for sure. Yeah.
Were you ever told a funny story or anecdote about the Latin American audience?
Not really. Maybe aside from that, there's just a lot of energy.
Yeah. The enthusiasm is on another level.
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. So I have one last question. It's sort of a trademark question here at our blog, which is as follows. If you could relate your musical ideas or artistic expression with other forms of art, such as a book, a film, or a painting, which one would it be and why?
That's a wonderful question. I think maybe painting or watercolor. I've been really interested in sketching, like figure drawing and watercolor, as well as digital art, and photography too. I'm really interested in all of those fields. I think a lot of us in Bentley are kind of multimedia artists. As you know, Ben's an incredible 3D artist. Jessica does 2D and 3D are. And yeah, just a lot of people in the band are really, really trying to expand beyond music. But yeah, for me, I think if I had to pick one, maybe it would be watercolor.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Courtney.
Yeah,
had a
my
great
pleasure.
time, and hope you had a great time as well. And good luck with the rest of the tour, and good luck with the new album. I personally loved it after a few listens, of course, but I hope everyone enjoys it.
Thanks. Yeah, and I appreciate you giving it, you know, a couple listens, because I do think it's an album that grows.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, cool. And just please feel free to follow up if you have any questions, or if I wasn't clear on anything. I'm happy to add cliff notes. So.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye.